Attaching AWS EBS volumes to Kubernetes pods, a comprehensive guide. This podcast is brought to you by Business Compass, LLC. We are an Amazon Web Services advanced consulting partner. We build and migrate workloads to Amazon Cloud. Our website is businesscompassllc.com. Our phone number is 973-638-2228. Our email address is contact@businesscompassllc.us. In the world of Kubernetes, managing storage is crucial for running stateful applications effectively. AWS Elastic Block Store, EBS, is a popular choice for persistent storage in Kubernetes clusters on AWS. This podcast will walk you through attaching an AWS EBS volume to a Kubernetes pod using YAML configurations. We'll cover defining a storage class, setting up PersistentVolume, PV, establishing a PersistentVolumeClaim, PVC, and configuring a deployment to mount the volume. Define a storage class configuration. 01 storage class.yaml. The first step in attaching an EBS volume to a Kubernetes pod is to define a storage class. A storage class allows administrators to describe their classes of storage. Here's a sample 01 storage class.yaml file. AP version, storage.k8s.io/v1. Kind, storage class. Metadata. Name, AWS EBS. Provisioner, kubernetes.io/AWS EBS. Parameters. Type, GP2. Fs type, ext4. In this configuration, provisioner specifies that AWS EBS will be used as the storage backend. Parameters define the type of EBS volume, GP2, and the file system type, ext4. Set up persistent volume with o2pv.yaml. Next, you need to set up a persistent volume, PV. A PV is a piece of storage in the cluster that has been provisioned by an administrator or dynamically provisioned using storage classes. Below is an example o2pv.yaml file. AP version, v1. Kind, persistent volume. Metadata. Name, PV AWS EBS. Spec. Capacity. Storage, 10 GB. Volume mode, file system. Access modes. Read-write once. Persistent. Volume reclaim. Policy, retain. Storage, class, name, AWS EBS. Oz. Elastic. Block. Store. Volumite. Volume 0 AppDef 12345678990. Fs type, ext4. In this configuration, Volumite should be replaced with the actual ID of your AWS EBS volume. Capacities specifies the size of the volume. Access modes defines how the volume can be accessed. Read-write once means the volume can be mounted as read-write by a single node. Persistent volume reclaim policy determines what happens to the PV when its claim is deleted. Establish a persistent volume claim using o3pvc.yaml. Once the PV is set up, you must create a persistent volume claim, PVC. A PVC is a request for storage by a user. It is similar to a pod in that pods consume node resources and PVCs consume PV resources. Here's a sample o3pvc.yaml file. AP version, v1. Kind, persistent volume claim. Metadata. Name, PVC AWS EBS. Spec. Access modes. Read-write once. Resources, requests. Storage, 10 GB. Storage, class, name, AWS EBS. In this configuration, access modes should match the access modes defined in your PV. Resources specify the amount of storage requested. Storage class name ensures that the PVC uses the correct storage class. Configure deployment and mount volume in o4deployment.yaml. Finally, you must configure your deployment to use the PVC and mount the volume. Here's an example o4deployment.yaml file. AP version, apps/v1. Kind, deployment. Metadata. Name, EBS deployment. Spec. Replicas, 1. Selector, match, labels. App, EBS app. Template, metadata. Labels. App, EBS app. Spec, containers. Name, EBS container. Image, nginx. volume, mounts. Mount path, /user/share/ninux/html. Name, EBS volume. Volumes. Name, EBS volume. Persistent, volume, claim. Claim, name, VC AWS EBS. In this configuration, the volume mounts section mounts the PVC to a specific path inside the container, /user/share/ninux/html. The volume section refers to the PVC created earlier. Conclusion. Attaching an AWS EBS volume to a Kubernetes pod involves defining a storage class, setting up a persistent volume, establishing a PersistentVolumeClaim, and configuring a deployment to mount the volume. By following these steps, you can ensure your stateful applications have the persistent storage they need to function correctly. Thank you for listening to our podcast. Please share this podcast, visit our website, and follow our social media links.